And I'd like to give the floor to Jack Hennings. He is exactly the person who entered this room together with Madame Lalumière, entered our home, mine and Yura's, 29 years ago, together immediately after the putsch, and they traveled deliberately to look at Yeltsin. And when they looked at Yeltsin, it took them some 40, 30 minutes, I don't know. And then our French friends said, look, they gave us a call and said once they are, after they've done it, I suppose they should give a call on you. And you live very close to the White House, and they entered people from the Council of Europe. And Madame Lalumière was fantastically beautiful, wearing a red scarf, very much like in Soviet military times. She used to wear this fox. You remember these? Nowadays, these silver fox. You don't remember that because you're young, but you remember. So what am I talking to you about? Well, but nevertheless, I'm so thankful to you. I'm so grateful to Jack and to many others who supported Madame Lalumière when she invited us in 10 months to talk to her in Strasbourg, that those people who just, we were people absolutely unknown to them, people from the street who just said, why don't we start this school? Then it turned into an association of these schools. That's why special thanks to Jack, who is co-founder of this school too. And I'd like to give him the floor to do the wrapping up. Please, Jack, you now have the floor.
Thank you very much, Lena, for your kind words. I never hesitated when I was asked if I would join the Association of Schools of Political Studies in 2008. I just stopped working at the Council of Europe. I could have said, well, I'll go home and have a rest. And I thought, well, this is the one project which I think is done in the Council of Europe, which is really worthwhile. And 10 years on, 11 years on, I still continue to believe that it's one of the really good projects run by the Council of Europe, and that's why our association supports the schools of political studies and supports the Moscow school in particular, because it's one of the ones which has fallen on hard times. We've had other ones, like the one in Azerbaijan with Ilgar Mammadov. I think you were talking about him a few minutes ago. And there is, of course, a problem in Turkey as well. And let's hope there won't be problems in other countries in the future. But I'm not going to talk to you for long because I know everybody's tired. You've been here, had a very long 2 days. First thing I wanted to do was to tell you that for me it's a real privilege to have been here, because I find these meetings really, I'm going to use a strange word, exciting, because there are so many things which happen here, so many ideas which flit from one side of a room to the other, that it's really very intellectually stimulating and exciting. And therefore I'd like to thank the speakers, the invited speakers, who did a wonderful job. But I also want to thank all of you, because without you, there would not be this sort of exchange between speakers and between yourselves. And that, for me, is the most stimulating part of it all. And when you hear, we've heard a lot, the word gloom and doom has come up on a number of occasions today, looking at the future. Well, when I look around this room and when I listen in here, I don't think there's any reason for gloom and doom, because it's a great encouragement to know that so many young people are getting themselves involved in important questions for the future, not just of Europe, but of our planet. And actually, originally, when I started thinking about what I was going to say to you, I remember that on last Sunday I had dinner with a man who had worked on cruise ships. It's going to sound a bit strange to you. But during the course of the conversation, I discovered that on these huge cruise ships, which carry 3,000 people or something like that, which are like a sort of a little town wandering around the oceans, what do? Under the cover of darkness at night, they throw out all the rubbish into the sea. And it came to my mind, how on earth does one police that sort of thing? And how on earth does one deal with these sort of ecological problems? And I think that is something perhaps that you may want to look at in the future in dealing with multilateral organizations to see how one can come to terms with some of these ecological problems. Now, there's so many things which I've sort of have gone through my mind. I remember yesterday's discussion on the media, and I see Pilar who's there. I thought it was a very good discussion, but it's a vast discussion, and there are so many more elements that one could discuss that I hope that in the future, either in the forum or in other meetings, you pursue these particular issues, because I think that A, they're not going to go away, and B, they're very, very important. And then another thing which came to my mind was listening to various discussions when human rights issues came up, and the way in which the so-called countries which have values actually deal with human rights situations. And then I just noted down on a piece of paper, what should we as Council of Europe countries, as EU countries, or as concerned countries, be doing, for instance, about the Uyghurs in China, or about the Rohingya in Myanmar, or the Roma in Europe, or not to mention migrants and refugees and so on and so forth. These are questions, again, which I think could well be discussed in a future forum. And then one of the things which struck me particularly was Yuri's message, he called it, I think, or speech this morning, in which he mentioned the motto, all different, all citizens. I think that sums up a great deal about what we're dealing with here and about the realities of the world. I mean, we are all different, but we are indeed all citizens, and we have to assume the responsibilities which go with citizenship, because citizenship isn't just something that you get, it's something which you earn as well, because you have to put back something into the society which protects you in one way or another. Then I was very impressed this morning as well by the comments that Marco Politi made on the Pope and his commitment to overcome what he called the wounds of contemporary society, things like inequality between nations and peoples, the new slavery which he mentioned, including 25 million sex slaves across the world, or the people who are in erstwhile jobs which are there one day and gone tomorrow, or indeed those who have no jobs at all. And then the other discussion, which I thought was very exciting, vast again, and which could be, again, broken down into little bits, which was the one on the global European space, where there were sort of ideas going from in one direction and another, and I think one could divide it up into about half a dozen different topics which could be looked at with specialists who could be invited to come here. Well, I don't want to go on any longer. I just wanted to say that these are all issues which merit more profound discussion in the future. And I would just like, there was one final word or suggestion which I leave with Lena as well. Recently in Strasbourg during the forum, we had a meeting with Enrico Letta, the former Italian Prime Minister, who is the head of Sciences Po in Paris, and who runs I can't remember exactly what it's called, a Democracy Institute in Italy, and which also has an offshoot in Berlin. And I think it would be very interesting to get Mr. Leta, who is a very committed European and somebody who is very committed to exactly the values which we are discussing here, to get into the family of the Moscow school, because I think it's important one should hear also critical voices about what's going on in the West, and not just the voices which are often heard criticizing what's going on in the center or in the East. And therefore I think it would be a very good thing. And he is interested in establishing a relationship with the Association of Schools of Political Studies. And so I hope that that may be something that we can do. So I end by just recalling again the all different, all citizens. And the other thing I will say, I'll paraphrase a word of, or a phrase which came from Václav Havel when he was talking about Europe, and he said, he used the word Europe, I'm going to use the world. If you don't dream about a better world, well then you'll never get a better world. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank Jack. Thank you very much, Jack. And thank you. This school is the people. I am very proud with you, with the audience which is gathered here, and indeed has been with us for years in places far and wide. It is so important to follow these discussions, the life as it unfolds before our eyes. The one thing I would like to say from the height of my age, if I may say so, these are difficult times. Times are always difficult, but probably for the type of people most of us are, these are somewhat disturbing times. It is important to depart, to have a point of departure, not to compromise on our dignity. Every person knows where one stands and what are these limits, what and how we perceive our dignity. 5 years ago, it seemed that this school and we're all falling into an abyss with the events of 2014, but we went on and we continue to go on. Here I always remember the words of Seneca. Today the harvest is bad, but tomorrow we will have to seed. Thank you.